Somewhere out on an open plain, tens of thousands of years ago, a man falls hard, and something in his leg gives way with a sound he has never heard his own body make before. There is no hospital nearby. There is no ambulance coming. There is no cast, no crutches, no painkiller waiting in a cabinet. And yet, when researchers dig up skeletons from this exact period of human history, they keep finding something that should not be possible. Bones that were clearly broken, sometimes broken badly, that healed back together and let that person walk, run, and hunt again for years afterward. The method they used to make that happen is stranger, more painful, and more resourceful than almost anyone expects. And by the end of this video, you will understand exactly what ancient humans did the moment a bone in their body gave out. If uncovering how the human body actually survived disaster long before modern medicine existed is the kind of mystery that pulls you in, this is exactly the territory we explore every week on this channel. So staying close by means the next one will not slip past you. Let's start with the part that surprises almost everyone first. A broken bone in the ancient world was not automatically a death sentence, and that fact alone tells us something important about how much ancient humans actually understood about their own bodies, even without a single word of modern medical training. The human skeleton has a quiet advantage built into it that most people never think about. Bone is living tissue. It is constantly rebuilding itself, and when it breaks, the body immediately starts a repair process on its own, no doctor required. Blood rushes to the site of the break within minutes, forming a clot that begins knitting the area back together. Within days, the body starts producing a soft mesh of new tissue around the fracture. Within weeks, that soft tissue slowly hardens into new bone. Ancient humans did not need to understand any of this biology to benefit from it. Their bodies were already doing the hardest part of the job automatically. But automatic healing is not the same as healing correctly, and this is where things get complicated fast. If a broken bone is left completely alone, without any support, it can heal in the wrong position. The two broken ends can shift, overlap, or bend at an angle as the body repairs them, leaving a limb crooked, shortened, or far weaker than it used to be. For a hunter-gatherer whose entire survival depended on the ability to walk long distances, run from danger, and physically compete for food, a badly healed leg was not a minor inconvenience. It could mean starvation, exile from the group, or worse. Ancient humans clearly understood this risk on some level, because the evidence left behind shows they were doing something specific to prevent it. Archaeological finds across multiple ancient sites show broken bones that healed in remarkably straight, well-aligned positions, some so clean that modern doctors examining the remains have said the healing looks almost deliberately managed. That is not an accident. That is evidence of an ancient form of first aid, applied by people who had never seen an X-ray in their lives. Here is a question worth sitting with before we go further. If you broke your leg tomorrow with zero access to a hospital, do you think you would even know where to start? Type your honest guess in the comments, because what ancient humans actually did might be more logical than you expect. The most direct evidence points toward a very simple but effective idea: immobilization. Researchers studying ancient skeletal remains have found broken bones with healing patterns that suggest the limb was held rigidly in place while it repaired itself. The materials available for this would have been whatever the environment provided. Straight, sturdy branches bound tightly against the injured limb using strips of hide, plant fiber cord, or sinew from an animal. In essence, an early, improvised version of the exact same splint a modern paramedic would apply at the scene of an accident today. Think about how strange that actually is. Without any medical training passed down through textbooks, without a single class on anatomy, ancient humans arrived at nearly the same basic solution modern medicine still uses for a simple fracture. That is not a coincidence. That is what happens when trial, error, and necessity are given enough time to work on a problem that directly threatens survival. None of this means the process was painless or clean, and this next part is where the story turns considerably darker. Setting a broken bone, meaning pushing the two broken ends back into proper alignment before splinting it, is an intensely painful procedure even with modern anesthesia available. Ancient humans had none. No numbing injection, no sedative, nothing beyond whatever their own body's natural pain tolerance could withstand. Evidence from ancient burial sites, and even a handful of preserved written accounts from early medical traditions describe this process being done by force, sometimes requiring several people to hold the injured person down while another physically realigned the bone by hand. It is difficult to overstate how brutal that moment likely was for the person experiencing it. And healing did not always go the way anyone hoped. For every skeleton showing a clean, well-aligned fracture, researchers have also found remains showing bones that healed badly, twisted at unnatural angles, shortened noticeably, or fused in positions that would have caused a permanent limp or reduced mobility for the rest of that person's life. Survival was not guaranteed just because the bone eventually healed. Sometimes healing itself became its own long-term injury. If a story with stakes this real is grabbing your attention right now, that is exactly the reaction that helps more people discover the same kind of surprising history through a simple like on this video. So if it is doing that for you, this is a good moment to tap it. It is worth remembering too that ancient humans were never a single group doing things the exact same way everywhere on the planet. Different environments handed different communities, completely different splinting materials, and the archaeological record reflects that variety clearly. Groups living in dense forested regions had easy access to flexible young branches perfect for shaping around a limb. Communities in colder, more open environments sometimes relied on animal hide wrapped tightly enough to hold a limb rigid on its own, occasionally reinforced with bone fragments used almost like a natural splint. Coastal or river-adjacent groups have left evidence suggesting reeds and dried plant stalks, lightweight but surprisingly rigid once bound together, were pressed into service for the same purpose. There was no single ancient fracture care manual passed down to every human on Earth. There were countless independent solutions to the exact same problem, each shaped by whatever raw materials a particular landscape happened to offer. There is another danger layered on top of all of this that most people never consider. An open fracture, meaning one severe enough to break through the skin, was an entirely different level of threat. In a world without antibiotics, any open wound was an invitation for infection. An infection following a serious bone injury could spread through the body with terrifying speed. Some archaeological evidence suggests ancient communities recognized this danger and applied specific plant materials with natural antimicrobial properties directly onto open wounds, an early, instinctive form of wound care built entirely on generations of observed trial and error, rather than any understood science of bacteria. It also appears that ancient humans understood something else modern medicine strongly agrees with today, that a broken bone needed time and stillness to heal properly. Evidence from certain sites suggests injured individuals were sometimes kept in one location for extended stretches, cared for and fed by other members of the group, while their body did the slow work of repair. That detail matters more than it might seem at first. It means an injured person, unable to hunt, gather, or contribute physically for weeks or months, was not simply abandoned. Someone had to make the decision to keep feeding and protecting a person who, in the short term, offered nothing back to the group's survival. Sit with that for a moment, because it reveals something about ancient human life that rarely gets discussed. Survival in these communities was never purely about individual strength or self-sufficiency. It depended just as much on other people being willing to carry an injured person through the weeks it took their body to heal. Without that support, even a perfectly splinted bone would have meant nothing, because the person wearing it would have starved long before the healing process finished. In a very real sense, a healed fracture from this period of history is not just physical evidence of a broken bone. It is physical evidence of an entire group of people who chose, day after day, to keep another person alive through something that offered them nothing in return, except one more member of the tribe who could eventually hunt, gather, and protect them all again. There is also fascinating evidence that ancient humans developed specific fracture care knowledge that got passed down and refined over generations. Certain ancient medical traditions, with written records, describe surprisingly detailed methods for treating different types of fractures differently, recognizing that a broken forearm needed different handling than a broken thigh bone, and that a fracture near a joint carried different risks than one in the middle of a long bone. This level of specific, categorized knowledge does not appear overnight. It suggests a long, slow accumulation of observed outcomes, passed from one generation to the next long, before anyone had a word for the science behind why any of it worked. What is perhaps most remarkable is what this tells us about ancient human intelligence and cooperation as a whole. A broken bone was never solved by one clever person working alone. It required physical restraint during an agonizing procedure, careful construction of a splint from whatever materials were available, ongoing wound care using observed plant knowledge, and weeks or months of communal support for someone who could no longer contribute physically. Every single piece of that process depended entirely on other people choosing to help, again and again, long enough for a single fracture to fully heal. So here is the real answer to the question this video opened with. Ancient humans survived broken bones not through some forgotten medical secret, but through a combination of the body's own natural healing ability, a surprisingly effective, improvised splinting method built from nothing more than branches and hide, brutal but functional pain endurance, instinctive wound care passed down through observation, and perhaps most importantly, a willingness within the group to keep an injured, temporarily useless member alive and fed until their body finished the job on its own. It was not a single trick. It was an entire system, built without a single textbook, refined slowly over an unimaginable stretch of human history. If this uncovered something that surprised you, there is a question sitting right behind it that might be even harder to imagine surviving. What actually happened to someone in an ancient community when they went completely blind, in a world with no glasses, no surgery, and absolutely no way to correct the problem? That story is coming next, and it reveals something about ancient human resilience that most people have never once stopped to consider, something that has almost nothing to do with strength and everything to do with adaptation.